Hey guys, the purpose of this video is to help you prepare for next week, but more importantly to review the instructions for the theory papers and hopefully answer any questions you might have. So before we get into the detailed instructions of the paper, just a reminder about resources that are available to you. So if you click on the Modules tab in Canvas and you scroll down to week 5, there is this module called Resources for Writing, Editing Your Work, and Conducting a Peer Review. Within this, there are some resources that are just kind of nice to have. For example, how to write a manuscript and some resources for scientific writing and editing your work. Those are just resources that are handy, nice to have. Here at the bottom are the specific resources for how to do peer review. So I've got a video already created for you about how to do peer review. And then I've got an example of how to respond to reviewer comments. This is the example we went through in class. And there's a couple of examples here for you to look at. As you might recall from class, I do a paragraph format. Sam does a Excel table format. Either approach is fine. Whichever one you prefer to use that works best for you, feel free to use it. What's important when you do the peer review comments is that you explain, number one, what are the comments that you received from your peer, and number two, how that you write a response that explains how you integrated their comments to modify your paper. We're going to get into the detailed instructions of the paper. I'll review that again in a moment. However, there seems to be some confusion from some of you guys about what it is you need to submit. So let's cover that first. You need to submit 3 documents. You need to submit your response to reviewer comments, which looks like either this Word document or Sam's Excel table. You need to submit a second document that is the track changes version of your theory paper. And those track changes are where we can look to see that you integrated the comments from your peer review. And then you need to submit a clean and final paper. That clean and final paper is what we're actually going to grade. So we're going to just open up your peer review document just to verify that you indeed did it. We're going to look at your track changes to see that you actually did incorporate changes, but we're not going to read all of those in detail. We're just going to maybe give it a skim and close it. What we are going to grade is that final clean paper. And so you want to make sure that after you accept all changes, most likely from your track changes version, and do a save as, accept all changes, that clean version, look through it to make sure it is actually clean, right? That nothing weird, formatting, or other errors happened when you did the accept changes. So what does that final paper need to look like? If you begin on page 28 of your syllabus, we have detailed instructions. And we have instructions for the PhDs, and then after that we have instructions for the DRPHs. The instructions parallel with 2 differences that I'll get to at the end. So let's just start here. You have a maximum of 2,500 double-spaced words. That does not include your tables or your reference list. It does include in-text citations. You must use APA 7 for all format. I'm sorry, it does not include within-text citations either. Within-text citations, oh yeah, sorry. In-text citations do count, the references do not. I apologize. Read what's in the syllabus. The syllabus is what we use as the guide. So 2,500 words excluding your tables and your reference list. It is recommended that you begin with your priority population and your modifiable behavior. It's recommended that both papers talk about the same population and behavior. After you identify your priority population and your modifiable behavior, you're going to need to describe both the prevalence and the incidence data that are relevant to your population and the behavior or the health concern. You want to describe how the setting and the environment impact your ability to modify the behavior of your priority population. What considerations do you need to think about in order for that person to modify their behavior? Is it feasible? Are you asking them to do something that is not feasible because of the environment in which they are in or the setting in which you're trying to work with them? So think about that. If you're asking them to do something that there are so many environmental constraints that the likelihood of them doing the behavior is low, then perhaps you need to be thinking about a different behavior, because ultimately it needs to be a modifiable behavior. So you need to explain how they can modify that behavior given any environmental constraints. You can also think about how the environment and the setting might facilitate and support any sort of behavior modification. You then want to be summarizing the evidence from your intervention table that are relevant to the theory upon which you're writing. So if you are writing about the health belief model and you have intervention data, say you have data on 15 interventions and 3 of those are informed by the health belief model, then you would talk about those 3, right? And you could say how there's 3 out of the 15 interventions that you were able to find talked about health belief model constructs. You want to make sure you define all the constructs in your own words, and you want to give an example for how that construct manifests within your priority population. Next, you want to reflect on what you know about your population, the setting, and the environment, and based off of that understanding, articulate which constructs are most likely to be most significant in supporting behavior change. Afterwards, you want to think about your own research and how useful that theory would be for your work with your priority population. Identify 3 strengths and 3 weaknesses of using the theory for intervention development. And for every weakness, identify a recommendation to reduce the impact of that limitation. You're going to want to make sure your paper is well written, that there are no grammatical or spelling mistakes. And prior to submitting, as we already began talking, you want to make sure you have peer review. The DRPHs, your paper is exactly the same with 2 exceptions. When you're writing about your priority population and modifiable behavior at the beginning, you need to talk about and position your paper within the community partner with whom you wrote about in your focus statement. So if you said that you were going to partner with HISD, then you need to be framing your paper within talking about your population and your behavior within the context of the HISD ecosystem. And then and your examples, for example, need to refer to students in the HISD ecosystem, right? So you would kind of work it through in that way so that all of your examples come back to those students. And then when you get down here to the strengths and limitations, you need to think about those strengths and limitations within the world of your community partner. Those are really the only differences. So to reiterate, 3 documents get turned in. You have the clean document that we are going to grade. You have the track changes document that shows how you responded to peer review. And then you have your peer review document that shows the statements provided by your peer and your response to each of those statements. Those are the 3 documents you turn in. Hope that's useful. And you guys have a great day. I'll see you Monday.